The Untold Tales of the Ottoman Empire. The Cipher and the Historian. Some truths are not buried. They are hidden in plain ink, too dangerous to be read aloud. The wind outside whispered against the cracked glass of the neglected annex of the Imperial Library, where dust clung to the velvet curtains like secrets refusing to be swept away. By nightfall, the corridors of Topkapi Palace became a different world, less a center of power, more a maze of ghosts and whispering walls. And in one of those forgotten chambers, surrounded by scrolls untouched for decades, sat Mehmed. Once the empire's most respected court historian, Mehmed now moved like a shadow through the world he once illuminated with prose. Stripped of title, beard graying before its time, he had been sentenced not to execution, but to obscurity, a punishment reserved for those who knew too much but had not yet crossed the invisible line of treason. But tonight, that line would blur. By candlelight, he unwrapped a scroll unlike any other. Bound in faded red silk and sealed with the long-defunct crest of Sultan Bayezid II, it had been misfiled among tax records, a deliberate error, he suspected. Its parchment was brittle, its ink faded, but as Mehmed translated the ancient cipher, letter by letter, something clicked. These were not mere chronicles. They were revisions. According to the Codex, the Battle of Mohacs, celebrated as Sultan Suleiman's greatest triumph, had ended not with decisive victory, but with betrayal from within the Janissary ranks. The supposed death of Prince Mustafa, long mourned as a tragic political necessity, may have been staged. And beneath the script lay embedded markings, mathematical sequences, as though layered by someone trained in more than just the literary arts. Hamid's breath caught. "This isn't history," he whispered. "It's choreography. Someone wrote the past like a play." A soft creak echoed from the hallway. He blew out the candle instantly. The heavy iron handle of the library's side door turned, slow and deliberate. Footsteps. 2 sets. Mehmed tucked the codex beneath the false floorboard he'd pried open hours earlier. Just as the door burst open, and torchlight flooded the room, he stood tall, face calm, palms ink-stained. 2 guards entered, flanked by a slender figure in silk robes and silver embroidery, Safi Hatton, a high-ranking court official and rumored informant of the Grand Vizier. "Mehmed Effendi," she said coolly, her voice like silk hiding a blade. "His Majesty thanks you for your continued curiosity. You are to accompany us for questioning." Mehmed didn't resist. He only glanced once at the candlewick, still smoking, and then at the sealed floorboard behind him. He knew 2 things. The codex was real. And someone inside the palace didn't just know about it, they had led the guard straight to him. Layla and the bloodline of fire. Some legacies are not inherited, they are forged in exile, in silence, and in shame. The scent of molten brass clung to Layla's skin as she wiped soot from her face, the forge behind her glowing like the last heartbeat of a dying star. Her hands, steady, scarred, and calloused, moved with precision over the delicate gears of a miniature astrolabe. She wasn't just building devices, she was deciphering fate. Layla was not her father's heir. She was her mother's weapon. The world knew her only as an eccentric tinkerer in the copper bazaars of Galata, a woman too bold to marry and too smart to silence. But those who whispered in hushed corners spoke of another name, Layla of the Sulphur line, descendant of the alchemists banished after being accused of sorcery, sedition, and heresy. What few knew was that their heresy had been knowledge, forbidden metallurgy, impossible equations, and one terrible truth. The story of Suleiman's erased heir, carried from mother to daughter in whispers and scars. On this night, news reached her by Falcon Scroll. A contact within the palace had sent a single phrase, "Mehmed arrested." The codex exists. Layla's breath caught. Her father had died defending that truth, branded a lunatic and thrown from the Galata Tower. Her mother had vanished soon after, leaving only blueprints and riddles. The time had come to finish what they started. But to retrieve the codex from under the Sultan's nose, she needed access to the inner circles of Topkapi. And for that, she had no choice but to approach the one man who had every reason to hate her, Captain Sem, the Janissary commander who once swore to protect her, and whom she had abandoned in his hour of need. Their last meeting had ended with blood on his blade and guilt in her eyes. Now, she would face him not as a friend, but as the daughter of the most dangerous bloodline in the empire. In the hollow compartment of her traveling chest, she packed a golden medallion engraved with the symbol of a phoenix rising from fire, the seal of the Sons of Sulphur. Then she locked the door of her forge behind her. Because to reclaim her family's name, she would have to expose the greatest secret of the Ottoman court. And someone was going to burn for it. The Janissary's oath. Every oath has a breaking point. Every blade, a hesitation. The barracks of the elite Janissaries echoed with the sound of discipline, boots striking stone, steel clashing in rhythm. But within Captain Sem, silence had settled like a wound that would not close. He had been the youngest janissary ever entrusted with command, his sword kissed by the Sultan himself. A man of honor. A weapon forged in duty. But tonight, that weapon trembled, not from fear, but from memory. Layla. It had been 10 years since she disappeared into the smoke of rebellion, leaving behind only a trail of burned letters and an oath unfulfilled. He had loved her, once. A love that defied logic, that unraveled him from within. He had waited, defended her name when others spat on it. And then, in the moment he needed her most, she vanished. Now, she stood before him again. Not as the girl he remembered, but a woman carved by exile and secrets. She wore no veil, spoke no apology. Just a whisper. Mehmed has the codex. He found proof. And someone in the palace wants him dead for it. Sem should have turned her in. He had orders. The Sultan himself had signed the writ, execute the traitor Mehmed before the court's eyes. But as Layla opened her palm and revealed the hidden compartment in the codex's binding, a map inked in disappearing script pointing to a chamber beneath top copy, his hands trembled. This map, she said, her voice steady, leads to the Eye of Tactor. The relic your ancestors were sworn to protect. Did you ever wonder why? He had. But never out loud. Sem locked the chamber door behind them and stared at the torchlight dancing in Layla's eyes. You left me with nothing but questions, he said. I came back with answers. Before dawn, Mehmed was to be executed in the square. That night, Sem led a prisoner out of the barracks in chains, his uniform soiled, his head lowered. No one noticed that the man was not Mehmed at all. By the time they reached the sewers beneath the palace, the real Mehmed had already vanished. With that single act, Sem crossed the invisible line between loyalty and treason. The oath he had taken was broken, not by hate, but by love for a truth greater than any empire. And he knew, from this moment forward, there was no going back. The circle of the crescent. Beneath empires lie older empires. Beneath truth, something even more dangerous, belief. The scent of rotting parchment and damp limestone clung to the air like a curse. Water dripped from the ceiling of the forgotten catacombs below top copy, echoing like a ticking clock. Every step Layla, Mehmed, and Sem took echoed across centuries. They had entered through a crypt marked as sealed since the Black Death, only Mehmed knew better. This tunnel predates the Ottomans, he said, running his fingers along the carved archway. Possibly even the Byzantines. But look closer. There, beneath layers of Christian iconography and Islamic inscriptions, was a third symbol, a crescent cradling an eye. The seal of the circle. According to the codex, this secret order had formed long before Suleiman's reign, guardians of relics too powerful for any one dynasty to hold. Their mission was not loyalty to crown or caliphate, but to history itself. Or rather, to its manipulation. As they descended farther into the dark, they reached a circular chamber lined with stone sarcophagi. Each bore names scratched out violently. And at the center stood an altar, not religious, but scientific. Engraved with celestial maps, pressure dials, and a mechanism that pulsed faintly with a glow from within, the Eye of Tactor. It wasn't merely a relic. It was a machine. Part astrolabe, part clockwork engine, it pulsed like a heart. Mehmed murmured translations etched around its edge, fate is not a thread, but a wheel. Turn it, and the world turns with you. Layla's fingers trembled as they hovered above the interface. Her mother's schematics had always ended in unfinished spirals, now she understood why. Her family hadn't failed. They had been interrupted. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows. Step away from the eye. Torches flared to life, revealing a half-circle of hooded figures. Some wore the insignia of palace servants. Others, high-ranking clergy. And one among them. A judge from the imperial court, someone they had once trusted. The circle is fractured, the judge said, lowering his hood. Some of us believe fate must be preserved. Others think it should be corrected. Layla narrowed her eyes. And which are you? A slow smile. I believe in erasure. In a flash, blades unsheathed. The chamber, once a tomb of secrets, now became a battlefield of ideals. Sem drew his sword. Mehmed scrambled toward the eye. And Layla? She activated the device. For a single moment, the world blinked. When their eyes opened again, they were no longer in the same timeline. Only Layla noticed the difference. A crack in the ceiling that hadn't been there before. A sigil on the judge's robe subtly altered. The eye had turned. Something had changed. But what? The heir who never died. The dead do not always rest. Some live on, not as ghosts, but as secrets in flesh. The eye of Tactor spun slowly, its cogs whispering to themselves, as if remembering. Mehmed carefully adjusted the dials, aligning them with the celestial coordinates noted in the codex, 3 stars over Constantinople, the solstice moon, and a date that had been struck from every calendar, the day Prince Mehmed vanished. They expected visions. What they received was far more intimate. Layla gasped as the room dissolved around her. Not into light, but memory. A world not her own. She stood inside a marble courtyard flooded with golden light. Rose petals on the breeze. The smell of jasmine and blood. And a boy, barefoot, eyes wide, staring at a masked figure approaching with a dagger. "Forgive me," the figure whispered before plunging the blade. But the boy didn't die. He was spirited away, hidden by women loyal to the harem's inner circle. Midwives and astrologers who believed the child carried something sacred. Not power. Not prophecy. But a deviation. He had been born under a rare conjunction of stars said to mark those who could alter the course of destiny. Then, Layla saw the midwife hand the infant to a cloaked traveler. The boy wore a bracelet, a small bronze band etched with a burning phoenix. The symbol of the sons of sulfur. Layla staggered back, heart thundering. That child, he survived. Mehmed stared at her. It means the royal bloodline continued. Secretly. Illegitimately. And he, no, Layla interrupted, her voice hollow. She lifted her sleeve. There on her upper arm, hidden beneath the ink of a faded birthmark, was the same phoenix sigil. A mark she'd always dismissed as coincidence or childish myth. But now it pulsed faintly, responding to the energy of the eye. Sem stepped back, his face pale. "Layla, what are you saying?" She couldn't say it aloud yet. Because even she didn't fully believe it. The codex had mentioned a child born in secret and a lineage silenced not by death, but by design. Could it be, the bloodline had doubled back? Could Layla be the descendant, or the continuation, of the heir they all believed dead? Before they could process the implications, the eye began to overheat. A pulse shot through the chamber. The device went dark. Mehmed, sweating and shaken, turned to them. The vision cut off before the child's name was spoken. But we now know this, the bloodline continues, and the circle failed to erase it. Layla touched the phoenix mark. For the first time in her life, she felt less like an outcast, and more like a key. A key the entire empire had been trying to lose. The vizier's double tongue. The cleverest traders don't whisper in foreign tongues. They speak both, and smile as empires burn. In the heart of Topkapi, the Grand Vizier reclined beneath silk drapes, perfumed with oud and laced with the tension of a man who ruled without a crown. His face, as always, was a mask of serenity, his hands adorned not with rings of excess, but keys to rooms no one else dared enter. Behind him, a map of Europe and Asia had been altered, invisible ink revealed secret trade routes, encrypted messages, and naval paths charted not by the Empire, but by Vienna. He poured tea with one hand and slid a letter across the table with the other. To His Imperial Highness, Charles V, status unchanged. Relic presumed functional. Ottoman control unstable. Recommend intervention disguised as alliance. This was not treason for profit. This was orchestration. The Grand Vizier had spent decades cultivating his image as the Sultan's most trusted advisor. But his ambitions had outgrown the empire. He believed the Ottoman dynasty had become a bloated relic, obsessed with the past, blind to the future. What he intended to build was something new, a world court, ruled by intellect and prophecy, not blood and legacy. The Eye of Tactor would not belong to one empire. It would belong to him. But not even he knew that his fortress of secrets had a crack. That crack had a name, Adil. His son. Adil was everything the vizier could not afford in a child, brilliant, empathetic, and cursed with a sense of justice. Hidden beneath court robes and noble duties, Adil had watched for years as his father erased rivals with rumors, bribed historians to reshape records, and staged alliances with foreign monarchs under the guise of diplomacy. And now, Adil had joined Layla's cause. He met with her in the lantern-lit back room of a spice merchant's shop, eyes filled with conflict. He thinks he can control the future, Adil said, voice tight. But the future is already slipping from his grasp. Layla studied him. He doesn't know you're working with us. Adil smiled faintly. He taught me to speak in double meanings. He never imagined I'd use them against him. Back at the palace, the vizier prepared a new decree. It called for a public cleansing of heretical sects, those linked to the circle. He planned to root out the truth by smoke and fire. But as he signed the parchment, a single drop of ink fell from his quill. It bled across the page like an omen. He did not know the real threat was already inside his house, with his blood, his name, and a blade sharpened by conviction. The burning of top copy. Empires fall in silence, then flame. And the flame is always lit by someone who claims to love it. It began with a procession. Dignitaries flooded into the imperial courtyard, summoned under the guise of celebration, the sultan's night of reflection. Lanterns lined the path. Oud played softly. The air smelled of saffron, roses, and something darker, gunpowder masked with clove oil. Layla, hidden among the servants, watched from beneath a silk veil. Mehmed was in the crowd too, disguised as a visiting scholar. And Sem, her heart clenched, was already inside the palace walls, marked for execution at dawn. He had been captured 3 nights prior after a failed attempt to transport the eye out of the catacombs. He had refused to speak, even under torture. Layla had begged Adil to stall the order. But the vizier moved fast. Too fast. Because it wasn't just about Sem. It was about eliminating the circle in one swift, public purge. Unbeknownst to the crowd, the vizier had filled the lower halls of top copy with flammable oil, bribing the palace pyrotechnics guild to wire it beneath the very tiles the guests now tread upon. His plan was simple: blame the circle for an assassination attempt on the sultan, stage an explosion, survive it himself, and emerge as the trusted savior. But Adil had made a modification. While his father focused on spectacle, Adil tampered with the detonation delay. Instead of a controlled burst meant to miss the sultan, it would go off minutes earlier. And Layla knew. She had only one chance to reach Sem before the chaos erupted. She sprinted through the underground corridor, each torchlight flickering like a countdown. She reached his cell, iron bars scorched, but still standing. "Layla," he coughed. "I knew you'd come. There's no time." She pulled the eye of Tactor from beneath her robe. It pulsed wildly, as if it, too, sensed what was about to come. She hadn't planned to use it. But she had no choice. She twisted the central dial. A vibration hummed through her bones. The air shimmered. Boom. Flame ripped through the courtyard above. Screams shattered the music. Mosaic ceilings cracked like eggshells. A column collapsed. But Layla and Sem were no longer there. They reappeared on the palace rooftop, 3 days into the future. The city below was different. Topkapi's east wing was gone, reduced to rubble. Banners of mourning hung in place of imperial flags. And from a bulletin nailed to the gate, a headline: "Sultan dead in palace fire, circle of the crescent to blame." Layla's breath hitched. The vizier had succeeded, but not how he planned. She turned to Sem. "I was supposed to save you. Now, we're fugitives in a future we don't understand." Sem, bloodied and limping, grinned weakly. "No. Now we're the only ones left who know the truth." And beneath the rubble of the throne room, the ice still glowed, cracked, but not broken. And it remembered everything. The betrayal of blood. You can trade anything in the empire: gold, secrets, power. But the cost of love is always blood. 3 days after the inferno, the empire stood on edge. Mourning veiled the city, but underneath the grief was suspicion. The sultan was dead, the palace fractured, and the circle, once a whisper, was now a declared terrorist sect. Its members were hunted. Its name cursed. And Layla? She was their queen of heretics. Wanted posters bearing a crude sketch of her face fluttered across Istanbul's alleys, each ink-stained image declaring her a traitor, an assassin, and a sorceress. Sem, still weak and half-healed from the explosion, urged caution. But Layla had already made her choice. In the shadows of a burned-out mosque, she met with Adil for the last time. His robes were now those of an acting regent. The vizier had manipulated the Senate to appoint him in the power vacuum. But in his eyes, the rebellion still flickered. "You know why I summoned you," she said coldly. He nodded. To negotiate for Sem's life. Sem had been recaptured. Layla's time jump had saved them both, but only temporarily. The vizier's agents were everywhere. And Adil, despite his betrayal of his father, was now the only one with leverage. "I'll give you the relic," she said, drawing the eye of Tactor, now cracked and humming like a dying star. "But you will guarantee Sem's release. Swear it." Adil hesitated. "If I let him go, I lose what little power I have left. My father may be dead, but his influence." "Swear it," she said again. "Or I'll destroy the eye here and now. No one gets to rewrite fate." His voice broke slightly. I swore I would protect you. Layla stepped closer, eyes shimmering with fury and pain. Then this is your moment. They made the trade at dawn. Layla left the eye behind, sealed in a vault beneath the regent's chamber. She waited outside the city wall, cloaked in mist and silence, heart pounding. A carriage approached. Doors opened. Sem stepped out. No chains. No guards. Just a limp, and a face that still smiled, when he saw her. And then, a whistle pierced the air. Before Layla could react, a janissary arrow flew from the trees, straight through Sem's back. He collapsed into her arms. I'm sorry, he whispered, blood bubbling at his lips. He lied. He died before she could scream. Adil had made the trade. But he had never said when the execution would be carried out. He had used her. Used Sem. And secured the eye. Layla knelt in the dirt, soaked in blood, heart cracked beyond repair. She had gambled with the one thing she had left to believe in, trust. And the empire had demanded its tax. From the folds of Sem's cloak, she found a parchment, folded and blood-stained. It was from Mehmed, his final contribution before vanishing into exile. Inside, it read, the heir lives. The bloodline is not broken. Find the one named Arif. He knows the origin of the throne, and the lie it stands upon. Tears blurred her vision. Her hands clenched the letter. She had lost her love. Lost the relic. Lost her faith. But now she had a name. And somewhere in the eastern provinces, the true heir, the last ghost of the erased dynasty, was waiting. The crown of shadows. The most dangerous throne is the one no one remembers. Because its silence hides a scream that could shake the world. The eastern provinces were a world apart, where the empire's gold turned to dust, and its laws ended at the edge of the Euphrates. Here, in the highlands choked by mist and prophecy, where ruined Zoroastrian fire temples smoldered beside abandoned Byzantine outposts, Layla arrived with nothing but a name, Arif. In every village, she asked after him. Most feigned ignorance. A few whispered warnings. And finally, one elderly weaver pointed toward a monastery carved into a mountainside, veiled by clouds and time. There, the woman said. The one who does not age. The man who speaks with stars. Layla found him in silence. Clad in linen, tending to dying roses that bloomed only once a decade. His face was sun-weathered, but his eyes, they were ageless. Arif did not turn when she arrived. He simply said. You've traveled far to awaken what should have stayed buried. Layla unrolled the scroll from Mehmed. You are the heir. A long pause. Then, quietly, I was. Before I understood what that meant. Over tea and candlelight, the truth unfurled like ancient silk. Arif was not just the son of Suleiman's secret heir. He was a living memory, the last vessel of a truth so dangerous it had been cut out of history itself. The Ottoman dynasty, he revealed, was not the beginning. It was the continuation of a conquest that had begun long before, when a now-lost civilization ruled from beneath Constantinople's foundations. A people of light and machine, of knowledge bordering on divine. The First Empire. They had created the Eye of Tactor. Not as a weapon, but a warning. Whoever controlled it would not just shape the future, but unleash the past. The Ottomans had found the remnants during their conquest. And the royal bloodline had done what all frightened men of power do, claim. Erase. Rewrite. Arif pulled aside a woven tapestry in the monastery's inner chamber. Beneath it, carved into the rock itself, was the original crest of the First Empire, a serpent eating its own tail inside a mirrored crescent. The sigil of eternal recurrence. Layla stepped back. This is what the eye was protecting. No, Arif said. This is what the eye was containing. He turned to her, his expression solemn. You must not try to restore the empire. You must destroy what it's built upon. But if I do, Layla whispered, everything falls. Arif nodded. That is the price of ending a lie that has ruled for centuries. Layla stood in that chamber for a long time, staring at the truth carved in stone. She had come seeking a king. Instead, she had found a curse in human form. The fall that was written. The greatest illusion is permanence. And empires, like lies, are beautiful until they fall. The Eye of Tactor had been broken, but not silenced. Though fractured, it pulsed in Layla's satchel like a wounded heart. Every beat warped the air around it. Time was no longer linear. Past and present blurred. Children dreamt of battles not yet fought. Books rewrote their final chapters. In the markets of Istanbul, clocks ran backward for 1 minute every hour, and no one could explain why. Layla returned to the capital alone. Sem was dead. Hamid vanished into exile. Arif refused the throne. And now, the fate of the empire rested on one final choice. She would not claim power. She would reveal the truth. Disguised as a mourning scholar, Layla infiltrated the Grand Assembly on the day of succession. With the Sultan dead and the vizier's political heir, Adil, set to be crowned, the city buzzed with false peace. But Layla had no intention of letting the lie survive another coronation. In her hand, she carried a final message, not to the rulers, but to the people. She connected the eye's core to the cathedral's great calligraphic projector, a device once used for imperial decrees. The cracked relic sputtered, sparked, and then ignited. Across the domes, walls, and streets of the capital, a vision played. It showed the original conquest of the forgotten empire, the betrayal that birthed the Ottoman rise. It revealed Suleiman's true heir in exile, the manipulation of fate, the bloodline that had been hidden through generations. It showed the vizier's plots, the rewritten victories, the ancient machine buried beneath the palace floor. The people screamed. The officials fled. And then the foundations of Topkapi Palace began to tremble. The eye, in its final breath, had triggered the memory of the city itself. Stones shifted. Caverns cracked. Water flowed into sealed chambers. And from beneath the palace, the original capital began to rise. Obelisks. Machines. Temples of glass and gold swallowed by time. The true empire, never gone, only buried. Adil stood on the coronation balcony, watching his destiny fall to ash. He turned to run, only to find Layla waiting for him. "You used my love," she said. "Now I use your legacy." She handed him a scroll, the original codex, signed and sealed by those who had stolen time itself. Then she walked into the rising ruins. As the eye released its final pulse, a wave of golden light spread across the city. Not destruction, recalibration. Buildings shifted slightly. A tower that never existed now stood tall. A child who had died of fever now played in the streets. History had rewritten itself. Layla vanished into myth. Some say she became a prophet. Others, the final protector of the eye. Her name was never recorded in the new books, but every timeline remembered her just enough to whisper. The empire was never theirs to rule. And so, the Ottoman Empire did not fall in battle. It collapsed under the weight of its own erased truths. But something else rose in its place. Something uncertain. Something honest.